Are you seriously going to eat, you fat blibbity blabbity blob?
I mean, then some of you might be like,
continual.
why would I want to start this?
Sensitive. She's sensitive.
You are listening to the Tammy Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast, where we share stories that are, you guessed it, unscripted.
That's the thing, this journey doesn't stop.
It doesn't really
right?
end. We have a general sense of the topic each episode, but really the whole point is just to show up and be authentic and let our inner child speak its truth.
And I have continued to work through that story of constantly hearing, well, we don't want, got a hot dog on our hands. Yeah, guess what, Mr. Sabatsky, you do.
So I'm so excited that you are here, and it is my hope that you hear yourself somewhere in the story so that way you can feel seen and heard as well. So let's start talking. Welcome to the Tammy Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast. I am so excited about today's episode. I sat down with my guest earlier today and recorded, and man, oh man, was I feeling all the feels. I had tears streaming down my face. This story, it's one of heartbreak, but also so much love and healing that came from it. And just another example of how sometimes there can be a gift in a very painful package. And my guest has just done that in so many beautiful ways. And so I'm excited for all of you to hear from him and for him to share his gift and his heart with all of you. So, but before I do that, I will keep the intro short and sweet because I want you to get to the good stuff. But I have to share this little story about what happened last Tuesday, literally a few hours after I released the episode about silence. And again, if you follow me on social media, I wrote about it because when I was sharing the episode, this had already happened. So I usually release the episodes like super early in the morning, like 3 or 4 a.m. And then I go to the gym, I do my thing. And then later that morning, I'll post it on Facebook and Instagram. But in between that time, I went back to the gym and did some cardio and then went in the sauna. And there was a YouTube video that had popped up in my news feed, I think on Monday or even Sunday before this. So this was Tuesday, right? Because tune in Tuesday. And the heading of the video said 2025 New Year's message. And then in all caps said, today, anything can happen. Well, oddly enough, I didn't listen to it on the day that I saw that. I saved it to my watch later folder. But then when I sat down in the sauna and I pulled up my phone, that was the first video back in my news feed. And I was like, okay, well, apparently today's the day. And so I hit play and I'm listening to this. And all of a sudden my attention went elsewhere. There was these two gentlemen sitting off to the side of me that started speaking sign language. And already I was thinking, you gotta be kidding me, because just 3 hours before I released an episode about silence and I talked about how so many times people are talking without speaking. We're hearing without actually listening, that whole thing. So I'm already like, oh my gosh, this is wild that these two are speaking sign language. Like I've never been in the sauna, 6 days a week for the last 3 years and never seen that. Interesting, huh? I'm not kidding. Literally the same time that I saw these two men speaking sign language, the YouTube video in my earbuds started talking about Helen Keller. And for those of you that don't know who Helen Keller is, I think most people do. She was blind and deaf. And what the person, I was gonna say the videographer, no, she wasn't, what is, she was the person in the video, was talking about Helen Keller. And then she said that Helen Keller taught the blind to see and the deaf to hear, but she wasn't talking about people like her. She was talking about people like you and I that do still have those senses, but that actually aren't seeing, that actually aren't hearing. And I was like, no way, get out. I almost, people in the sauna are probably like, is she okay? Because I was having this like moment of, just wanted to share what had just happened, but obviously no one in the sauna knew why I was getting so excited and emotional, honestly, emotional. And then she went on to say, actually, I'm going to look this up because I don't want to butcher the quote. And for those of you that follow me on social media and already read this, I apologize, but I'm just assuming that most don't. Okay. So after she had said this about helping the blind see and the deaf hear, then she quoted this Maria Rilke. I've never heard of her, But the quote was, "I hold this to be the highest task of a bond between two people, that each should stand guard over the solitude of the other." I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is wild. And then, so it was Carolyn Miss, and she went on to say, "How beautiful the gift that I can give someone else to protect their quietness, their need to be alone, and to support that." I was like, if that isn't confirmation about that episode, I don't know what was. And I had shared on that episode, if you haven't listened to last week's episode yet on the Sound of Silence, please do, because I had talked at the beginning of that episode how that was truly a channeled message, and there was all of these signs and nudges that I had that basically created that episode out of nowhere. And then to receive all of that confirmation a couple hours after releasing that episode, I felt like, okay, God, got it. I can actually do this. Thank you. Like, I'm receiving your messages. I'm receiving your downloads. Like, I'm trusting in my ability to do this. Thank you. And that's how it felt. And so I wanted to share that. And again, it goes back to just paying attention and being in tune, because while those things always seem to happen to me, I think they would happen to everyone if we all just became a little bit more aware and in tune with our surroundings and the way that we feel and the way that we might notice things. I think that's possible for everyone. And so I just wanted to share that because it was a pretty cool story. And I love sharing all of those little synchronicities and things that happen. So I enjoyed that. And I hope to do more episodes like that if you guys enjoyed those. And if not, you're like, no, Tammy, please don't. Just keep on bringing the guests. But I do have a lot of amazing guests lined up for you. So, but I want to hop to today's because, again, this man is so special, and I'm so grateful that our paths crossed. And you just know sometimes when you meet people that they have a story, and he was one of those. So I'm going to hop over to that episode and we'll get started because we share how we met each other and all that fun stuff over there. So, all right.
Hey, it's Krista, and I'm so excited to tell you all about Tellurian's 5th annual Not-A-Gala. First of all, get ready to laugh your butt off for a great cause. This event is happening on Friday, February 28th at the beautiful Madison Concourse Hotel. You'll enjoy a night of great humor and heartfelt support from special guest Charlie Varens, because nothing brings people together like music, delicious food, fun, laughter, and it's all for a great cause. All the money that is raised this night goes to helping so many people in our community and their loved ones receive mental health treatment that they are so deserving of. Oh, and by the way, if you are a local business and you are interested in sponsoring, all you have to do is go to tellurian.org/events/gala. And by the way, this year's theme is supper club style. So yeah, start digging through your flannels. I can't wait to see you there. It's going to be a great night, and you're going to feel fabulous doing it.
All right, we're rolling.
All right.
We are live.
We are live.
Okay, so I am here with my guest, Mark, and I'll share a little bit of how we met. Is at the gym, and sauna time is where I've kind of gotten to know you, and
Right.
and just picking up on your energy and the kind of vibe that you give off is just this very kind, nurturing person. And so I was like, And then a mutual friend of ours shared a little bit of your story. And so I thought, I want to have this guy on the podcast because so much of what I share on here is stories of how people have turned their pain into purpose. And you've been able to do that. And so I thought,
Right.
wow, you have been given a gift and a painful package. And I see how you're sharing that. And so here he is, sitting down in the studio as opposed to the
Yes.
sauna where we're drenched in sweat. I was like, wow, you clean up nice.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting meeting someone at the gym and then finally meeting them in street clothes.
Right. Like, oh, you're a real person.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I have been going to the gym for a couple of years, and I see Tammy there, and she is always a motivating factor in whatever I do for a workout, and there's no way I would ever try to keep up with her. But as she said, a mutual friend of ours, Paul.
Shout out to Paul.
Shout out to Paul, because another amazing man at the gym, and there's many of them there that I've formed somewhat of a friendship with, to give a high five or a handshake or Sometimes a hug to the guys that are there is inspiring, and it sometimes is what gets me out of bed.
Yes.
And then the icing on the cake from the hour workout or whatever it happens to be is sitting in the sauna with so many amazing people. And it's not like we always carry on a conversation, but there's one person in particular that always sparks a conversation. A shout out maybe to Mark too.
Yeah, Marky Mark. I like to call Marky Mark. He hates that. It actually triggers some childhood trauma when I call him that, but it's all good fun.
Yeah. So it's a great place to be a few times a week, 3 times a week usually for me. But I was talking to Paul here one day just in the last month or so, probably just a couple of weeks ago, and shared with him a story that I have with my son Abraham. And it was just a quick 5-minute talk with him, but he saw the pain. I think that you show when you have pain in your life, I think it's best to show it. I kind of wear everything on my sleeves.
Same.
So, but that's how I heal.
Yes.
I think that we all have wounds and we all have stories to tell. But I think the way we heal, the way I heal anyways, is by telling the story.
That's literally what this podcast is about. And that's why I was like, I need to have this man on here because you represent it. Not letting shame keep us silent about whatever is going on in people's lives or whatever their story is. And when you can speak about it. And that's why I talk so much about childhood wounds and ego, because when you can understand why ego does the thing it does to protect us, all of a sudden it takes some of that shame away. And so when you speak about it, you take that all away and can really begin to heal. So I love that you are doing that.
And, and we all have that pain. And then I believe we all have scars. But scars, I think, show a healing. To keep it inside, I think, is an infection, where if you just harbor that infection, it's not ever going to heal. Right. And I think that by talking about it, that is healing. I think tears are healing. I think hugs are healing.
Yes.
And to get that release, that freedom, is huge. And then we have scars, and we can talk about them to other people and let their infections hopefully heal through our story.
Yeah, I mean, there's a song, like, our scars are what makes us beautiful. And I think that's so true. And it's easy for people to judge a book by its cover, right?
Right.
But that's why I love to hear people's stories, is because oftentimes you're blown away by what someone has been through and endured. And, I've had Corby on here, who's another gym member, and just hearing his story, I was like, what? And the amazing things that he was doing with, I just have such a deep appreciation and love for this human now, knowing what they've been through. And so it's like, why wouldn't we want to share those stories?
Yes.
And, and I have total respect for people that want to keep that to themselves too. And however you want to heal, as long as you're healing and not just numbing and suppressing it and all those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good to get it out, and to hear other people's story is definitely a part of my healing too.
Right, because you're not alone, and it gives you permission to talk about yours and to get permission to cry and to feel. And sometimes we need that, especially growing up when the message was, I'll give you something to cry about kind of thing.
Right.
So especially for men and that's why I wanted to have you on here, is because of the way that you're sharing your story with men and young gentlemen too, of just allowing them and giving them a safe space to feel is so powerful.
Yeah, a safe place is a big part of it. And guys in general we don't like to, come out and share all of our hurts and problems and all of that. We want to be fixers, and we want to take care of our own problems and fix ourselves. Otherwise, we think it shows weakness. But when you do it and you start practicing it, the freedom that comes is amazing.
Yeah.
So my son, Abraham, Abe, everyone calls him, he worked with me pretty much on a regular basis. I'm a painter by trade.
You can give your business a shout out if you want.
It's just Mark Bendorf Painting.
There you go. Look him up.
Look me up. And so I had him working with me, and we just, I'd go and pick him up in the morning, and he'd come with me. I'd take him, we'd go to the job, and we'd do whatever we had to do. And it was great to have my son along with me. Teaching him a trade, a skilled trade I was proud papa.
Oh, I'm
There's
sure.
no doubt about it,
Oh, just give me goosebumps.
Yeah. So, I would pick him up every day. And one particular Friday, it would have been February of 2021. We had finished a job and put all our tools away, cleaned everything up. We were done with that project and went home. It was a Friday afternoon. We went home, and that Saturday I called him up. Texted him, and I said, well, come on over and I'll make breakfast. We got done with this job. Let's eat something,
Yeah.
So I make hash browns and omelets and all kinds of stuff. He came over and we ate, and we had a real good conversation about getting my other kids, his siblings, involved with he wanted to expand the business and keep moving on. He was big into Bitcoin. I wish I would have bought Bitcoin back then.
Yeah, right?
So we just had a really good conversation. That was Saturday, February 13th. And so the next day was Valentine's Day. And I didn't reach out to him. It was a Sunday. I did not reach out to him. And I just told myself I'll see him tomorrow, and we'll keep on moving on. That Sunday at 10 o'clock, I had just taken my dog out for her midnight duties.
Yeah.
And came back in, and I had missed a phone call. I didn't know it, but I had missed a phone call. And I picked up my phone to put the charger on it or whatever, and saw it just said Liz on it. I was like, well, that's funny. And I couldn't think of who Liz was, but it was Abe's roommate's mother who owned the house that they were living in.
Sure.
And I think maybe I missed a text. I forget how it went. But then it was either the text or the phone call. The next, they said, you need to come over to the house. There's a problem with Abe. And I was like, crap, what did he, get himself into something or what? And so I got in the car right away, went over there, and there were probably 6 police cars there. And I'm like, oh, this can't be good. No ambulance or anything like that. Well, apparently the ambulance had already been there. And when I walked into the house, he had 2 roommates, but there were the 2 roommates there, and one of them was the mom that owned the house, which was that Liz. And then a group of kids, just a group of kids. And I said, what's going on? And they said that Abe had passed. I'm like, what are you talking about? I just talked to him yesterday, and what's going on here? And it hardly, you're just numb
Right.
at that point. And so I'm like walking back to his room, and police wouldn't let me back there. And I'm like, you gotta let me see my son. I want to see my son. And so that was about, 11 o'clock at night. And we were there until 2 o'clock in the morning or something. And just, the kids were just devastated. Long story short, it was a accidental overdose. There was something, some fentanyl in a drug that he was taking, whatever it was. It rocked my world. I called his mom, of course, first, and all I could really say is, Abe is gone. Abe is gone. And she's like, well, where did he go? And through my tears and my throat problem with trying to get those words out, all of the kids there, the grief on their faces was just horrific. And I remember telling them, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Don't blame yourself. And it was a night that I'll never forget. A night that I'll never forget. And just the heartache is overwhelming. Yeah. It just is. And then, and then you have to start making phone calls and telling, grandpas and grandmas, and it was very hard. It was very hard. Then comes the week of preparing everybody, preparing for the funeral. And this, if you guys all remember back in 2021, we were kind of in all the COVID situations, so you don't know what to do for funeral arrangements and all that kind of stuff. So it was just, it was hard. Good friend of mine is a pastor, and he helped us through it, through our whole family through it. And he ended up doing the funeral too. And you just you just feel numb about it all.
Yep.
And my kids, Abe's mom, and the kids were just obviously devastated too. And you just have a week of preparing pictures or whatever you're going to do for the funeral. Meeting with the funeral directors and all of that is just, it's crazy. I had friends who would come over to just be with me, trying to be with my kids as much as possible. My oldest son, Sam, just really took over as a big brother role. My daughter the crazy thing is they just had gotten a new dog that Sunday, and it just a little, I don't know what kind of dog, just a little puppy. So bringing that puppy along was healing really for my daughter. She just kept holding that. I remember sitting.
She got him on the day that he passed.
Yeah. So
really,
just
that's one
crazy.
Of those things where you get what you need.
Yes,
the support.
right.
You're gonna need this little puppy to get through this.
I remember carrying him in just like in a little purse when we were in the funeral home. Just that little dog's head would just pop up, and she would just pet on him. So you come to the funeral then, and all of everything culminates on that, almost in that hour, And we're down in the front by the casket, and Abe's mom and the 3 kids and I are there, and people start coming through, and what do you have to hold it together. You can't break down. I guess you can, but you try your hardest to be strong. And I remember seeing his roommates walking down, and behind him there were like 30 kids. They had all kind of congregated out in the foyer, and all came, we're going to come down together one at a time. And I lost it. And I just called them. I said, you guys, come here. And we just had this huge, beautiful, it was like the end of a football game hug with everybody congregating. And I just was praying over them that this wouldn't end their lives like it ended Abe's. Abe was, he was an epoxy. He was the component that brought all these people together. Graduate of West High School. And when he was in high school, he was just like the life of the party, right? So, and he had many friends. One friend in particular would pick him up every morning. Abe he wanted to drive And I remember taking him on one of his first drives. He's like, "Oh, this isn't anything like I thought it would be." And so he didn't get his driver's license until he was 18.
Oh my gosh, too funny.
But one of his best friends across the street would pick him up every morning and take him to school. For 2 years, Jake did that. And what an awesome friend and what an awesome family. They actually live across the street from where Jennifer, his mom, lives. The people that the Lord puts in your life, you don't know why they're there sometimes, but that was a God thing for having such a good kid. Abe and Jake, I remember Jake saying, Abe taught me, he said, just keep going, keep doing what you're doing. And I think he's said to me that he kind of felt like he was the odd duck out because he was so smart. And Abe's like, you're great, man. You just got to keep it up. And they would be at lunch and there'd be a group of them and Abe would see a kid sitting by himself or something. He'd go up to him, come on over and sit by us. And so he was just, he was just a really good friend to many people. And I'll digress a minute. Back to when he was born, we barely had a name picked out for him.
Yeah.
And the name that just stuck was Abraham. And the story in the Bible is, Abraham is the father of many nations. So I really see that group of friends, all of those people as little nations. And he just brought all of them together under his wing and just without even trying.
Right.
That's what he did, but that's the kind of heart that he had, and that's the kind of heart that all my kids have. And they're just in their own way, they're lovers of people and they're leaders of people. And I think sometimes they don't even know it.
Oh, right.
They don't even know it, but they are. So, yeah, that's a big part of it right there, and that is. It's a scar. It's a hurt. It still hurts. And for anybody that's out there that hurts like that has lost a child, my heart goes out. My heart goes out to you. But I would encourage you to reach out. Reach out to someone that you trust, that you feel safe with. And I hope you have that person in your life. I did. I was fortunate to have people in my life.
Fortunate, but also you didn't close yourself off in your grief either. You had those people and you allowed them in and you allowed yourself to receive that support. Because some people, they have people around them that would love on them and support them, but they shut down or they guard themselves so much because it's like, well, I don't want to get close to anyone again because I don't want to experience hurt and loss. So if I never let you in, I reduce my risk of getting hurt. But so you allowed that. You're fortunate and you received that.
Well, and I think it even came before that, where wearing your emotions on your sleeve, and I know everybody can't do that, but being vulnerable to someone that you feel safe with is so good. So I was vulnerable many times on many different issues before this even happened, which brought a good group, a strong group of people in my life that I could trust. One of them is a good friend of mine, Dale, who's actually going through cancer treatments and all right now and has surgery coming up on Monday. But I remember him coming up and sitting on the couch with me. I mean, you've got hours, you've got time on your hands in between all this planning and stuff. I remember him sitting on the couch. I'm sitting in the chair and he's like, so I hate to say this, but do you have a plan on going back to work? And you need those kinds of people too. You don't just need all the hugs and all of that, but you need people to help you move on, and not that you're going to forget the hurt, but you need people to kind of kick you in the pants to say there's life goes on for you and how are you going to deal with it, and make a plan on when you need to put your pants on and get on with life.
Right. Well, right, because if you get stuck in those emotions,
Yep. It's hard.
and it's really hard to break out of that. And so you're right. It's just a matter of basically what he's saying is like, how are you going to move through this?
Right.
His version was how are you going to get back to work, but really he was saying, how are you going to move through this?
Yeah.
Because you're going to have to feel it. It's going to be like riding the wave. That grief's going to hit you out of nowhere and knock you down, but you got to get back up on the board and surf.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's many days where you hurt, you grieve. And that's a good time to reach out then to people.
But that's another choice though, too, is because again, the way I see it is ego wants us to just isolate and to close ourselves off and to not reach out in those moments. So that's where we have to make a choice. Like, no, in this moment, I should just call someone. I could let someone know. And I had an episode, my friend Erica, where I had a really kind of dark moment. And luckily somewhere it said, you need to reach out to her and just let her know that I'm not okay right now.
Yeah.
And that was enough, but it would have been really easy for me to say, I'll just get through this myself, or who knows what I would have said, And so it's anchoring into your faith or whatever it is that like, I don't need to go through this alone.
Yeah.
I can reach out to someone.
Yeah. It's important. I've heard stories of guys saying that they have reached out to someone in the other person's darkest moment, where they've actually talked a gun out of their hands. And that kind of takes me almost to another little story of when you think of someone, send them a text.
I was just going to say that. Thank you. Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
For some reason, they're in your mind for a particular reason. And it might just be that dark moment, but it might be even a darker moment where you talk them off a ledge.
I can't tell you how many times I have sent someone a text and said, you have no idea how much I needed this right now. And so those nudges, those intuitive little hits, those thoughts, they're not random. And actually, it's so funny that you say that because literally this morning, I thought of a girl that I had worked with and she went on our retreat back in November. And I just thought like, I wonder how Maria's doing. And then all of a sudden I see on Facebook and Instagram that she had posted a picture of her inner child and was just like, I'm so grateful for you. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I totally just thought of her. And it was like this, like, man, that energy or telepathy, it's don't ignore those things. Like those are all gifts that we have to be able to intercept those things. It's just, are we aware? Are we in tune?
Yes.
And if we can, last week's episode was all about, turning off the noise and the distraction and sitting in stillness and silence. And it's like, if we don't ever get quiet with ourselves, you miss those nudges, you miss those signs where it's like, you don't know that God might have sent you to save someone's like, I need you to send this text to so-and-so because they need it right now.
Yeah.
You don't want to ignore that stuff.
Yeah.
So yes, please follow those things. When you think of someone, send it.
Absolutely. And it can happen out in public too, at a grocery store. Oh, hi. Just sometimes just by saying hi to someone.
Oh my gosh. You just see how they light up and like, wow, someone noticed me. Someone.
Yep.
I'm getting all fired up. Because everybody just wants to be seen. And so if it's the cashier that like looks like they're having a down day, if you can just say something to make them feel seen in that moment or to feel heard in that moment. I remember there was a cashier at Target and she had on these beautiful rings. And so I just made a comment about like, oh my gosh, your rings are beautiful. Well, it turns out it was her mother's ring and she gave it to her on her deathbed and all these things. The fact that she shared that story with me, but it was just because creating this safe space for her to feel seen and heard. And it was one of the most beautiful moments. And it was just 5 minutes, like you said.
It just takes a few seconds sometimes.
Yeah, but we get so caught up in our own little worlds that we miss all of that stuff around us. And when it's just like these little gifts that we can drop to people. Well, and for yourself, you're like, I felt good. Like that was a total give and receive. Giving that gift to her, I was able to get a gift back and seeing how that made her feel.
Yeah. And to make it practical, like we were talking earlier today, was about our schedule.
Yeah.
So if we're always pushing on our schedule, push, I'm 5 minutes late all the time. Just think if you're 5 minutes early and you have that opportunity in your mind, in your own mind, because you're not rushed, that you can take a minute and talk to somebody instead of just being rushed through it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yes, having good people in your life is huge. I liken it to a story in the Bible in Mark, where it's actually in Mark Luke and John, I believe. Matthew, maybe. I don't know. Whatever.
I'm so impressed by anyone that can how do you
It's
remember
in-
the verse and the what?
Well, and I didn't, but I actually looked it up today. But so it's in 3 of the Gospels. I'll just read it quick here, if that's okay.
Absolutely, please do.
But it just kind of tells the story. So in Mark, in the 2nd chapter of Mark, it says, 4 men carried a paralyzed man on a mat to Jesus. But the crowd was so large that they couldn't get inside. They dug a hole in the roof above Jesus and lowered the man down. Jesus forgave the man's sins and told him to get up and go home. And there's so much to that. You've got the friends, then you've got Jesus, and then Jesus tells him something to do. And so that action step, the man had to get up and take his mat and walk. So it's not like he just was sitting there, but he had these friends around him to lift him up. And I felt like that man that was paralyzed when Abe died. But yet I had people that were there to lift me up on my mat and carry me to Jesus. And that just is, it's just it's a way that I like to look at it, because I know that I can't do it on my own. And when I realize I can't do it on my own, I have to look out for help.
Yeah.
And to have so many people in my life to be able that did that for me, and then I can do that again for someone else.
Right.
To be there.
Well, and that's such a beautiful example of, the law of giving and receiving. And so, and I've thought of this many times, is when I get into my own head about, well, I can do this myself and become hyper independent, like I block people from being able to give me that gift, to being able to support me. Because I know how good that feels to give someone love and support and encouragement. So it's like, why am I denying people to give that to me? Like, why am I not worthy of receiving that same thing? So that goes all the way back to this worthiness wound thing, where it's like, no, I'm worthy of receiving love and support too.
Yeah.
But it's very easy to shut ourselves off from that.
Right. Yeah. And it takes away a blessing from someone else, just like what you're saying.
Yeah.
It just let them breathe life into us. Let someone breathe life into me. It's a big part of being vulnerable, is just to receive.
Right. Oof. Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to, you had mentioned that big group hug. We talked about he was kind of the the adhesive and stuff. And even in that moment, even in his passing, the way that he was able to bring everyone together. But I think what was so beautiful, and one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on, was for how you have helped people, because I'm getting all the goosebumps and feels right now. And I just said this. I actually might have said this to Paul, one of our foam rolling chats, about it's not necessarily the trauma itself that leaves these wounds. It's the emotional support we have around a traumatic event. And so while losing your son in that way, or just in general, is very traumatic. Yeah. Absolutely. But what leaves a wound that can really leave this lasting hurt and pain and send people on these other spirals is not having the emotional support around that. And the way that even that night, the way that you, while you were going through your own stuff, were able to see those kids, see them in their grief, and pour into them like this was not your fault, and to give them love in that moment. But to continue even at the funeral, to let them come in and let's all feel this together. Like you gave them permission to feel that and to grieve and all of that stuff, but you continue to do that, which is so beautiful. Yeah.
So they are all strong in their own ways, but together, we had, because of it being COVID, there was no meal or anything else after the funeral. So we ended up on Abe's birthday in July of that year. We had a celebration of life, and there was just a ton of people there to come and support us, and that group of kids, there were probably, again, 30 of them there, just showing their support, but also accepting support. And just to be able to get together with them, the numbers are not always there. Their kids are getting older and they all have different things going on. But even over Christmas, I got texts from some of them just saying, how are you doing? And all of that. So,
Well, and we were talking outside of the sauna this morning, and it's just for them to know, whether they're in constant communication with you or checking in, like they know they can come to you anytime. They could send you a text anytime. And that is so priceless, so valuable, and so meaningful to anyone, regardless of what you're going through, to know that I know I have a safe person out there when and if I need them. Yeah. And that's just a gift that you give, and a gift out of this painful package.
Yeah. And I think we were talking too about having different age groups of kids being able to, so I still call the 28-year-old kids, but having a group of guys that are my age that'll hang out with my kids and stuff like that is great. But then to have someone that's a little bit closer to their age group being able to pour into them is huge too. So you've got the younger kids, and then you've got the 20-some-year-olds, and then you've got the people more in my age group. But we can all pour into each other. So it's me pouring into the 20, 30-year-old kids, and then the 20, 30-year-old kids pouring into the high school kids. Where it's a good snowball that just keeps rolling,
Yeah, and I was just going to say, and I've said this on the podcast many times, is when we think about this vase and how we need to fill up our own vase and let that spill over onto other people. But if you weren't allowing people to pour into you, or you weren't taking care of you, you don't have the energetic capacity to then pour into these people. And so that's where we think about, we can't shut ourselves down. And when we stop taking care of ourselves or not making ourselves a priority, like we can't show up and be that for other people. And so it's so important that even when we're going through our own stuff, that we don't lose sight that we need to be taken care of too. And whether that's you doing that for yourself or allowing other people to. Yeah. And I had mentioned this, I don't remember what episode it was. I'd shared with you that I lost my father-in-law to suicide. And it was, because it'll be 11 years in May. But it was from then to August where I learned something about myself, or found something within myself. And a gift that he gave me was how to take care of myself, feel my feelings and all of those things, and still show up for me while taking care of other people. Because before, and a lot of people can relate to this, is you put yourself on the back burner, and pretty soon your health, your mental health, your emotional health is in the tank. And you're not in a good place all of a sudden because you were taking care of everyone else. Right. And the gift, one of the many gifts that he gave me in his loss, was helping me see that, I need to actually take care of me to then be able to pour into other people.
Yeah. And I think we all have certain people in our lives that will fill our batteries. You
got to find them.
You do. You have to find them. But then you feel so much better. And like you say, if all you're doing is giving out, your cup empties out. And then what do you do?
Right.
But if you've got that person that comes in and helps fill that cup back up and charges that battery, then you're back at it again. So relationships. That's what it's all about, is relationships.
Absolutely. Building. Well, Andrew was on an episode, I think it was like 42, and kind of talking about like masculine and feminine energy and all that kind of stuff. But really what he was talking about, like going through his divorce and how he needed to find a group of men to be able to support each other. And so that's why, again, I think what you're doing is so important. Wanting to share that is we need to make this more of a regular, normal thing where men get together and can talk about this kind of stuff. And so that's something that you do. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about like the Holy Smokes, or how you go around and kind of share this story.
So my buddy Dave, who was the pastor that did Abe's funeral, he does he does a lot of stuff, and his mission is outside the walls. So you take church where not everybody wants to go to church. Not everybody, you don't have to go to church to be saved or whatever. So what he does, he opens up his house all the time to many people for many different things. And one of the things he does is Holy Smokes that you mentioned. And that's not just men, that anybody can come to that. But another thing is Dad's at Dave's. So that one is all guys, where he opens up his house on Wednesday mornings in May. And then again, he does it again in October. And there's a fire pit in his driveway. There's coffee in the garage. Whole man cave set up with donuts and eggs and all kinds of stuff, right? So that's a huge place. There'll be guys will bring their hot rods and they back them right up onto his yard, and motorcycles and all of that. So it's it just provides a place for sometimes 60, 70, 80 guys over the course between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. on a Wednesday, right in the middle of the week, right?
It just goes to show how many men are actually craving connection.
Right.
Like, let's not just talk about sports. Let's not just talk about surface level things.
Yep.
Like, let's create this environment where, we can bring our cars, and we were talking about that, but maybe there's an opportunity to be like, how are you really doing?
Right. Yeah. And it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
But if you find that happy place where you can, and he does it on different nights too, where people, sit back and have a beer or a sip of some bourbon. That's like Holy Smokes is at one of the cigar lounges here in Madison. So you're sipping bourbon and smoking a cigar, and he's telling a story out of the Bible, or I've given my story. And then he does the same thing at a coffee shop on the east side of town. So, but again, just safe places. But back to the guy thing, there's a strong group of just a smaller group that we have formed where we'll go on road trips together, go to Memphis or go to Nashville or something like that. And it's just this tight-knit group where we can all be vulnerable and share our emotions. Another group of guys that get together every Tuesday morning on a video chat, and we pray for our kids, just trying to be better fathers. And we can always, you're rolling out of bed, but you want to be there because you're going to get something good out of one of these guys, or you can fill their batteries too.
Right.
So
I love that.
Good stuff.
Well, and you had said something earlier about like a man, and we want to seem tough and all this stuff. And again, I take everything to the inner child perspective. And again, when you think about the little boy within us who, again, wants to feel seen, wants to feel heard and supported. And I think of my son, he's 6.
Yeah.
And, he's going through some life stuff with the transitions that we've had. Because I can tell he even needs to give himself permission sometimes to feel vulnerable and be emotional. But when he does, it's the sweetest thing. And it just kind of melts, like I really needed that, Mom. Versus like, I'm this football guy and I'm the sports guy, because he's very much that. Yeah. But there is this other side of him that I also want to nurture. And make sure he knows that it's safe for him to feel his feelings and to be sad and to be emotional and be this tough, cool football guy, Right. And so it just makes me think of how nurturing you have been to so many people's inner child, including your own. Yeah. To allow yourself the kind of support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's the caregiver that's always the one that is in need of care. You put out so much, and I'm talking in the medical field too.
Yeah.
If you're taking care of somebody, your own parents. Thank God for the nurses and the CNAs that go to houses, nurses that come to my folks' house right now to help my mom. And they're all just angels. Yeah. I don't know how they do it. Right. But if you're out there and you're a CNA, get some help.
Yeah, you deserve help and love and support too.
Yep, you need a day off too. So filling up. And you say about your son being young like that, and so there's that little boy then too in all of us men.
Yes.
And so how do you get that out? And if you're not married or if you're divorced, who do you go to then?
Right.
You need men to do that, other men to share that story with.
Right. And that's the thing is, and that's why I wanted you on here and having Andrew on here was just to let other people know they're out there.
Yeah,
Those
right,
men who
right.
feel safe in their emotions, who feel vulnerable, will create a safe space for you. They are out there.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
need to be celebrated more for doing that because it's not easy work.
Yeah. There's a men's retreat, a men's conference coming up at our church on the 1st of February. And it really pounds that into guys for us to find a community of guys that can do that. And it can be over food. It can be over woodworking. It can be, find something that you love to do and do it with another guy, fishing or whatever it is, boating. Any of those things where you can just be yourself with someone and open up the wounds, because sometimes they're still just sitting there festering, and you might need somebody to pinch it a little bit, and then it'll start to heal again. The scars are there, but at least we know that it's a wound that's healed.
I often think of soul contracts and stuff like that, and that's the way I kind of made sense of it with my father-in-law. Was like that was his soul contract, that this was the path that God gave him, but there was a gift in that for all of us. Like when he passed, it's like, are you going to find the gift in his passing? And it's like your son, like, he didn't go in vain.
Yeah.
There was so much love that came from that. I mean, a lot of pain, but a lot of love and a lot of healing that was able to come from that because you allowed yourself.
Yeah.
So again, if we can find the gifts in those painful packages,
sometimes we have to look for it, but it's definitely there.
it's hard to make sense of why something like that would happen, right?
Yeah, right.
But it happened. How can I turn this pain into something that helps me heal? And then, you find that gift, you're able to give it to others.
Yes. I want to do that. Give it to others.
You are. I mean, you're doing that right now.
Yeah.
On this podcast, but
thank you for what you do for everybody too. It's an awesome thing that you do.
I just love hearing people's stories, and we all have a story, and the more that we can share them, and it just helps you connect, because you could always tell, like, there's something about you in the sauna, but now I'm like, you're this fascinating, incredible human, and like to get your message out there more. Like I love being able to hear people's real story and like really getting to know people and what they've been through, where they've been, what their scars are, because I truly do feel like that just makes everyone that much more like beautiful in my eyes and God's eyes, and and connected.
Because all of a sudden, you, like you said with that other person that you were talking to, all of a sudden you just feel like you've got this new connection to them. You knew you liked them before, but you hear this story, and there's just so much more. To the relationship then,
I always think about that. Like if everyone were walking around the gym or the supermarket or whatever, and they had like the sign on their head and like their story, and you just be like, wow, we wouldn't judge people so much. We would be more open to stopping and saying, hey, how are you? Or, but if we can just try to do that more intentionally without having to have that information listed, just knowing that everybody's got a story. So when you're, like you said, not getting so mad in traffic anymore, because it's like, it's not that person's fault that you are late. But then just think about the energy exchange all the time. But if you can just go into the grocery store and someone's in their own little world, like you might have compassion. Like, I don't know what happened to them in their day.
Right.
I remember, this was probably a couple years ago now. I was driving and I'm trying to remember how it happened. But anyway, this woman came up on the other side of me, and I'm like, I know I didn't do anything illegal. Like what I did was absolutely, I wasn't getting in her way. I wasn't cutting her off, but she came up behind me and just like blaring her horn, and then came up on the side of me. Like we're at a stoplight now. And I'm just like looking straight ahead. I'm like, I'm not engaging, and just like screaming at me. And I could see motion, I could feel it, and I'm like, I'm not engaging. And then all of a sudden, the light turns green, she zips in front of me and slams on her brakes, and I was like,
what the heck?
And I could have let that.
Yeah.
And it did. It certainly rattled me for a second. Right. But in that moment, like I had the moment of like, what the?
Yeah.
But then just as quickly was like, I don't know what is going on in your life.
Right.
And I'm sorry that I tripped the trigger,
Yeah.
but I'm just going to send you like love, healing, whatever you
Yep.
need right now, because I know this wasn't about me, but wow.
Yeah. Well, and like you say, you don't know what's going on in their lives. And I think I thought about this as I was driving to the funeral or something like that, where you're passing by all these other cars and they're going on with their life, and you just think, well, I wonder what they're doing today, and I wonder if they know what I'm dealing with right now. And so I turn that around sometimes while I'm on the belt line and I'm in a hurry. I'm like, well, what if
they're driving to a funeral?
What if they're driving to a funeral? I would just. Can you imagine, you like that lady cut you off and this, that, and the other thing. It's just, I deserve and whatever. And they're like, I just am going to my son's funeral. Jeepers.
Right? It just makes you pause. And I think if we can pause more,
right,
and just come from a place of compassion, whether you know the full story or not,
right,
like everyone's going through it,
in
their own way. And so I just think that's a powerful message that you're sharing.
Thank you. I do. I don't like that I have to have it, but I am not gonna. People say, "Where was God in this?" And why do you still have? How can your faith still be strong? Yeah.
Well, this is good, because I've been wanting to ask that question this whole time. I was like, how is your faith playing a role in this? So this is good.
Well, and I think a few months afterwards, meeting with some guys, I think it might have been Dave, just said, how do you stay so strong? And I don't even remember exactly what I said, but I think that's when I told him the first time. I said, I just feel like this guy on a mat, that I'm paralyzed, but yet I've got people that are in my life that are grabbing a corner of my mat and lifting me up and just carrying me to God. And I couldn't in all of that, I couldn't turn my back on God. It made my faith stronger and growing in my faith because of the tragedy. There's absolutely nothing wrong with counseling. I would encourage people to get counseling through some of this stuff. And whether it's a Christian counselor or a secular counselor, whoever it is, I encourage people to get help. And I did too. I did through my divorce, and I did some through aid passing. And where I found my best relief and my best freedom is in a worship service, just where you're amongst other people of your own faith, and you're worshiping God, and that was the biggest thing for me. And that's where I get my strength.
Yeah.
I honestly get my strength through worship, through my friends, obviously.
That's how you fill your own cup, is through those things. Yes. And you have to find those outlets. And again, you have to be intentional, because it's really easy for you to be like, I don't feel like going to church today. When it's like, nope, I know this is what I need to pour into me.
Yeah. Another interesting story is in the midst of the week of Abe dying, and between him dying and the funeral, I remember sitting on the edge of my bed and just saying, Lord, just give me something, Lord. And that night I had a dream, and I don't claim to get a lot of dreams that I remember, but there was one in particular about a trip that we had made, and it just kind of brought his memory back to me, and I was like, okay, that's cool. And I went back to sleep, and I remember waking up to another vivid dream of my grandma, who had passed 25 years ago probably, and another lady that Abe and I had done some work for her and her husband. And in their condo, we were there for a couple of weeks, and they would always just pour out their love. We're going to Jimmy John's. This is again during COVID. They're 80 years old. We're going to Jimmy John's. You guys want something?
No.
And they'd bring lunch back, and we'd sit and eat lunch with them. But that lady, Florence is her name. So my grandma and Abe and Florence were at the pearly gate in heaven. And those two ladies were ushering Abe. Abe was in the middle of them, and they were ushering him into the presence of the Lord. Ooh. And that was my sign from God saying, I've got him. I received him. He's here. And just, it just gave me a peace that I knew where he was. Because kids at that age, they're all, over the place. And, well, I think God did this. And I think, coming from him. So I'm like wondering, Lord, did he go to heaven? Is he up there with you? Am I going to see him again? That was kind of silly questions or whatever you want to call them. But I would encourage people to ask God.
You are like in my head. 'Cause I was just gonna say, like, you gotta ask. Don't forget to ask.
You gotta ask for that. And I believe that God will speak to you when you are in your pit or wherever you're at, and you just ask God, give me something, Lord. He will not fail to give you something. It'll be something.
But it all goes back to being open to receiving too, right?
Yes.
Like you have to, if you're going to ask, be open to how that message comes, because it may not come how you think it will.
Yeah.
And it could be in a sign or something that someone says or a dream.
Yeah. There's something there.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
There's something there for everybody. Yeah.
That's interesting that when you brought up that story, it made me think of my dad, who was very close to my father-in-law, had a similar dream, a very vivid dream. Really? And it was after that dream, he had so much peace around that, because he felt like it was a direct message from God, being like, he's good.
Yeah.
He's good. Ooh.
Amen. Amen, sister.
Yeah. I love that.
Right.
Oh, on that note, thank you so much for sharing your story and your heart and your energy and just in his story and letting him live on through this episode. And so he can bless more people with his story, and that gift, continues, even though it was painful. It's a gift to everyone listening and to those lives that you've both impacted.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Reach out and make relationships, make friends, be vulnerable, be safe, and love on your kids every day. You don't know that last conversation.
Ooh.
You want it to be always to be a good one with whenever you leave somebody, I think. Always leave them with peace.
Thank you for that, because that's a powerful reminder for all of us.
Yeah.
Is you never know when that could be your last conversation.
Right.
When you work through our own stuff, or you're upset, and being able to move through that, I don't want to leave it like this. You don't want to leave words unsaid. You don't want to have regrets of that kind of stuff. And so that's working through your ego, though, to be like, okay, I know you don't like confrontation or whatever, but you love this person.
Right.
Or you want to resolve this with it. Don't wait.
Right.
Don't wait to do that.
Yeah.
Because you never know.
Don't let the sun go down.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much. This was such a gift.
Thank you.
And now you have a forever friend in the sun who's never going to
leave.
Because now we have this extra special bond.
I appreciate you, Tammy. Your spirit lives on beyond the sauna.
Beyond the sauna. My sweat that I leave behind.
Right.
I love my sauna family, and it is cool. Like, some days we have conversations about very random things, but sometimes you have like deep, meaningful conversations in there, and you get to hear people's stories. And it's even in there where when people are quiet, I just kind of wonder, like, what's their story, And so it's been a place where I've gotten to know a lot of people, and it's just a matter of like turning off your headphones and looking up and saying hi sometimes. And you can do that anywhere. So it's just, I feel very blessed to have met people like you through there. So
I concur.
Awesome. Well, I'll see you at the gym Friday.
Well, I'll be back Friday.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, Tammy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening. And please be sure to send Mark and his family so much love and light and all that good stuff. So
thank you.
yes, thank you. All right. We will see you next week. Thank you.